Hello, fellow scholars and purveyors of morbid curiosities alike. I'm Dr. Caleb, joined by the man with the body of a Grecian god himself, Dr.
That's
Zach.
not true.
And this is SCPod. Zach, how are you today?
Oh, not too bad. I've a bit of a pain in my back from bad posture, but other than that, how's the Aegean treating you?
As much as I do love a nice Mediterranean vacation, there's something weird about not being in my blindingly white cell every night.
Yeah,
Um, yeah,
makes you
but
homesick.
but at least I get to see the sun for the first time in months.
It's overrated.
Says you.
Yeah,
You haven't. When was the last time you even saw the sun?
good question.
Before we get too far along, I just want to say this season's a little bit different. Zach and I are not in the same room for once. I'm actually an undisclosed number of miles away on Gyaros, and Zach is in his I don't know if I can call it a man cave because I don't know if you're a man, but
It's mostly a cave.
Yeah. So, you might hear some stuff in the background. That is, other researchers and stuff being dicks. So, yeah. Anyway, Zach, where am I right now?
You are on the island of Gyaros. While you said it was an undisclosed number of miles away, it is actually about 90 miles south and east of Athens. And yeah, that's where you are. And what have you been doing there? What have you been covering?
So, keen viewers might have listened to our last episode about Harold Holt, and we talked about how we wanted to research this group of interest called Sarkicism. I, being the benevolent leader of the podcast that I am, decided to volunteer for research duty on all these Sarkic SCPs, and so I'm over here in Gyaros with SCP-2095, and Zach is at home in his, our cells aren't very comfy, but compared to the rock I've been sleeping on, no, it's about the same.
It's the same.
So, I guess let's get this show on the road. SCP-2095, also known as the Siege of Gyaros, object class safe, and special containment procedures are as follows. Reliquary Site-26 was constructed around SCP-2095, preventing access and enclosing it from view. Site-26 has been disguised as a weather observatory, and agents within the Greek government are to ensure that the site is publicly viewed as such. So, not too much, no barbed wire fences, for the most part.
They literally said it's weather balloons.
So, yeah. I'm not as well versed. Is Roswell an SCP?
That's actually a great question.
I feel like this could be something that that the SCP Foundation.
I tell you what, we'll round up all the round back up all the Kyles and the rest of the internet, and we'll do the Area 51 thing again.
Oh yes, they can't stop us all.
And then I loved one favorite thing about that whole thing was that the DoD and the Pentagon had felt the need to put up a statement saying that they could kill everyone that showed up if they wanted to.
Exactly.
Like, guys, that's some real small dick energy.
Yeah. That's calling us liars, saying that you can't stop us all.
Yeah. You can't stop all those Kyles on Monster.
Okay.
Can't be done.
Yes. Okay, so, description time. SCP-2095 is a subterranean temple complex in Gyaros, an uninhabited Greek island. Call that a far-fetched slip? Look, man, it's the same. It's the same word, just without a D.
Fair enough.
Anyway, it's a subterranean temple complex in Gyaros, an uninhabited Greek island in the Aegean Sea. The temple contains writing inscriptions of many ancient languages, including Cretan hieroglyphs, Linear A, and Hittite cuneiform, and a previously undiscovered writing form using spiral-shaped glyphs of varying complexity. The temple seems to have at once been a living organism, with samples revealing flesh, bone, chitin, muscle, and viscera. Radiocarbon dating puts the death, in quotation, death, of the organism between 1000 and 1200 BCE. Inside are long corridors similar to the human intestine tract, connected by sphincters that act as doors. This will be the first of many Baldur's Gate references that we are going to make, but if you have played Baldur's Gate 3, it is just like the Nautiloid. And as somebody that has had that stuff stuck to their shoe, it is as gross as it sounds.
Also, I want to call out, I greatly appreciate the fact that we're using the word sphincter today.
That one's for you, random audience member who said we need to say sphincter more.
And the audience member, he means me.
So the largest room contains I put in all caps here, bone altar, supposed to be used in a sacrificial manner, which I don't think if there is a cooler phrase on the face of the planet than bone altar. Like, I went and modified my will after this to say I want my bones arranged in an altar.
Hell yeah. That is pretty fucking great.
It is possible that the sacrifices provided 2095 with nutrients necessary for survival. The base of the altar is carved with an Ouroboros, believed to be important to the creators. There seems to be signs of warfare on the island, including skeletal remains with anomalous deaths such as implosion, internal combustion, disintegration, radiation poisoning, and fatal physical reconfiguration.
That's a phrase.
Just a lot of weird ways for, you won't find these on 1,000 Ways to Die, is what I'm saying.
Well, specifically, you're not going to find them on 1,000 Ways to Die within the time period that they're mentioned, between 12 and 1000 BCE.
Yeah. Based off of my limited research, the biggest way people died back then was getting kicked into a pit of to nowhere.
That's just your Riddler.
Preceded by the phrase "This is blank."
Yeah. Looks like there's one more paragraph left.
Yeah. SCP-2095 was found when archaeologists found another cool as fuck phrase. Cathedral of Bone.
Which is the next heavy metal album coming out.
We're going to be the next new metal... No, black metal.
Yeah.
We're going to be the next black metal sensation.
Cathedral of Bone.
Called Cathedral of Bone. Amnestics were administered to the civilian archaeologists, and those archaeologists were brought back into the general population. 2095 was secured, and Site 26 was created in 1949. I'm not going to try and put specific dates because we don't know if they're British or not.
Yeah, fair enough.
So, there are a number of things that were found in this metal as fuck cathedral and all these stinky intestinal hallways. So there was an inventory of things that that the SCP Foundation gathered. Things like pure gold, some goats, some pigs, a bunch of ancient dudes that were like seemingly maybe fighting or maybe all conscripted into this one army, and then a bunch of really cool, again, awesome descriptors here. Bone crafted blades and shields, bone crafted bows, like, whatever. Zach, I'm sure you're looking at the article online right now, but whatever the number says next to all these, take a -1 because I definitely took souvenirs.
Gotcha. Is it safe to say, Caleb, that you have entered the Bone Zone?
No, I entered the Bone Zone as a child, and I'm just vibing in the Bone Zone at this point.
He lives in the Bone Zone. He has a condo in the Bone Zone.
Yeah. So Zach, does any of these anything in this inventory kind of stick out to you?
Yes, there's one that you sent over the list to me earlier, and I did look over it. There is one I'm going to get into much later, but we're going to circle back onto that.
Okay. So, in addition to the inventory of things, there were recovered a total of 3 scrolls, and I'm just gonna read them. And I might put on a little bit of my my Broadway acting accent and see if I can, go from guy on vacation to destroyer of worlds, because that's, I feel like, the tone that needs to be said for this.
Go for
it. The wound, cut from the flesh of totality, deep. It severed the line of future and past. Drawn to its ancient fester, God swarmed as flies to a corpse. We waited within bloodless veins, faithful to that which we could not know, unable to imagine that we might become their greater. Here we slept until our souls became flesh. And that is signed as Sone Alku for listeners. SONEALKU. Take that as you will. Okay, so that was scroll 1. Not much. We'll go over the scrolls maybe after I read all 3 of them, and then we can maybe piece together what's going on here. Okay, so scroll 2. It is noted that it is heavily stained, and the paragraph is pretty illegible. So it picks up. The swineherd prostrated himself before the sorcerer king and asked, "Great sorcerer king and Azurmach, heart of man and light of lights, I speak for the folk of the cold marsh. We fear the red lanterns that dance without harmony. Our spirit guides warn of ill omens." And Ion did assure the man, "I have gazed upon the faceless ones, servitors of his undulating vastness. Their chief is blind, castrated by our words and will. He sings songs of anarchy, but they will not come again. These terrible spirits do not deserve our love. Render unto them no sacrifice until the stars have aligned." That is from Sone Vith. That one's a little bit easier to say. Maybe it's Son, like sun.
Maybe.
Anyway, scroll number 3 reads as thus. And to his flock, Ion thus spoke. I have stepped beyond the flow of dreams, stood before the old ones within their own desolate domain. I have endured their intolerable force across countless eons. I have seen the infinite dead worlds murder death herself. I have read the entrails of our Creator, beheld eternity unfurled. Know that our paradise draws near, and with our own flesh shall we birth it. And that is from Son Skull. So, what do we make of these scrolls, Zach?
They sound like they are religious, obviously religious in nature. They remind me a lot of like the Gospel of Luke, with Ion taking more of a messianic Jesus role, sort of offering his own weird version of the Sermon on the Mount. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's interesting seeing the aftermath of everything, given the addendum, and then like as we'll get into a little bit later with the roots of Sarkicism and things like that, proto and neo Sarkicism, it seems like this was kind of a divide for that.
Yes.
Where Grand Karcist Ion kind of speaks about how the proto Sarkics are kind of left in the dust, whereas the neo Sarkics are kind of rising up.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I just work here, man.
Same. Are we going into the addendum?
Yes. So, in 2014, a earthquake shook the island of Gyaros, and SCP-2095 suffered a little structural damage. The earthquake did open a sphincter door to a chamber not opened before, which it just sounds like a bad sentence to say.
sounds medically actionable.
Well, I've said this once, and I'll say it before. My PhD is in spooky stuff, not in sphincters.
I have a PhD in sphincters.
Exploration showed an unidentified human male with no signs of decomposition, some brain activity, but absolutely zero heartbeat. Also within was another scroll seemingly strewn about as though it was not supposed to be its final resting place. It seems to be written by the ruling party, but unsent, possibly by the events described in the scroll. Alright, so the scroll says as follows. Grand Karcist Ion, may this missive find you at Kythera, for it shall be my last. Our enemies have begun their assault on the island, but we have completed the rite of preservation. The temple will sleep and await resurrection by the children of
Adatum.
Adatum, thank you. The fallen kingdoms and followers of Mechane have united against us, even as their nations crumble. Still, they have transmuted our every victory in the region to that of defeat, even as their own fates are sealed. The Bleeding Heart is our last stronghold in the Aegean Sea, but no doubt our eastern domains remain strong under your eternal gaze. The wounds sustained today will heal. Into the ages of ages, we are undying. Their victory shall be hollow. Karcist Mexa has claimed their profane instruments and sails for Kythera as I write this. I vow that none are to leave this island alive. May their names be obliterated and their flesh consumed. We summon the Red Death. For the blood of heathens, we sacrifice ourselves. We will meet again in Adatum. I remain, Karcist Tundus. And then it also has a seal attached to it, which could you count this as a Ouroboros? I don't think it's very
No, that looks like
Ouroboros-like.
something we're going to talk about in a bit. But just to say it now, looks like a sealed of like almost a hydrificated depiction of Yaldabaoth.
Okay. I apparently have no idea what's going on. Hey, man, I signed up and they said, hey, you're going to go to the Mediterranean. And
that's how they get you.
I didn't know that I was going to need a new pair of shoes at the end of it and maybe years of therapy.
Sphincters will do that to you. Unexpected sphincters will do that to you.
So that's pretty much what the article gives us as far as this. It is noted that this is the first SCP that the Foundation has discovered that is directly tied to Sarkicism.
Mm-hmm.
And it's we're going to be getting into exactly kind of what Sarkicism is based off of Zach's limited research, but lots of, I hesitate to say body horror, but I mean, when you're crawling through a thing and you think that you've been Honey, I Shrunk the Kids and walking through your own intestines, it's hard to not get a little grossed out.
Yeah, I think the term is getting Maoied.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, so.
But speaking specifically about SCP-2095 here, I want to go into that a little bit before we get into the Sarkicism overview. What it seems like is 2095, this metal-ass temple that has absolutely no metal in it, is was kind of the last bastion of
Mhm.
this kind of stronghold for the Sarkics. Um, and it's kind of what it was, where they were getting invaded, and then they pressed a big red button that then did something to everybody. Is that what you're kind of picking up on?
Yeah. Specifically, I think this was the site, the last kind of sort of the battle in the west between Sarkics under uh, forces loyal to Grand Carsus Ion, specifically fighting against uh, a group of peoples, but also specifically the cult of McCain, or I suppose what we would now call the Church of the Broken God, which alone the Church of the Broken God forces would account for the unusual causes of death with the implosion, disintegration, and radiation poisoning specifically. And so I think those were what those bodies came in. I'm more concerned about the mentioning of the Red Death, which also showed up in the inventory, which is the one I pointed towards. Because in my research, Red Death seems to be a synonym for what we would refer to here in the Foundation as SCP-610, which typically
Ooh.
isn't easy to remove, and so if it was unleashed here, I kind of want to know where it went. I granted this is close to 3,000 years ago, so a lot can happen in 3,000 years, but 610 usually doesn't leave without a lot of devastation.
For sure, for sure. I am uniquely qualified because 610 is what I wrote my spooky thesis on. But you know, there is the possibility that it could have traveled to Siberia from here. I mean, it would be a lot crazier if it was like from, you know, America to Siberia. But no, I love that this is somehow connected to 610. We're gonna cover that soon.
Eventually.
I feel like that has to be, yeah. I feel like we have to like, that's almost the big bad of all of this.
Not quite, but we can get into that when we get into
Okay.
when we get into research.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah. So I guess they pressed a big red button that says Red Death on it, and it did whatever happened out here. So, interesting that there's this is like a war ground for two groups of interest, and I don't know anything about the Church of the Broken God, so I can't speculate on that. But there is some really smelly bodies here. That could be decomposition.
One giant smelly body.
That could also be, yeah, yeah. Oh God, you cannot. You know they make nose plugs.
Yes, I do.
I didn't. I was just doing the like Vaseline on the mask trick to like smell, to not get the smell of rotting flesh. But I don't know. Over under 10 showers to remove all this smell. Do you think?
Oh, I don't think there's enough shower in the world.
That's okay. I don't like showers anyway. Anyway, yeah, 2095 in a vacuum is kind of cut and dry. This is kind of the foundation to be built upon the rest of Sarkicism itself. It is an interesting thing to talk about because it is just this fleshy temple. But outside of that, it is safe, so it's contained for the most part. And there doesn't seem to be any new developments in it other than this like random sphincter that prolapsed, or whatever the medical term is. And yeah, do you have anything else you want to talk about with 2095 before we move on to things non-Gyarados related?
No, honestly, because while you've been researching and investigating 2095 in the island, I've been doing a lot of deep diving and research on Sarkicism in general, and so other than what you read to me here was mostly what I know about it. I will say that 2095 is an excellent starting point and jumping off when you're talking about sort of the overview of Sarcasm as a whole. Because we have what we got here. We have mention of Grand Crestist Ion. We have several artistic depictions of Yaldabaoth. There's a couple mentions of Red Death, and even a sideways comment about McCain. So I think this is an excellent starting off point to talk about sort of the research we did with it.
Yeah. So, like we said at the end of last episode, we are we took a month off to kind of come to grips with what Sarkicism is, and I spent most of that time over here in Greece. I wasn't working; I was just relaxing, and then I went to work. And so I did do a little bit of homework, and but something tells me Zach did a lot more.
Yeah, so I didn't really get a vacation, so I've just been reading this entire time, which I suppose isn't the biggest ask in the world. But
nerd.
I mean, what are you gonna do? But yeah, should I just get into it?
Yeah. I guess I can build like on what I kind of have picked up from talking to some of the other nerds that are around here, and then you can fill in some of the gaps.
Sure.
Is that okay? So Sarkicism is like Zach alluded to earlier, is a GOI, or a group of interest. There's a bunch of these that we know of, and Sarkicism is one of them. Sarkicism is a religious/philosophical system based on the teachings of one Grand Karcist Ion, its founder. Members practice ritual cannibalism, human sacrifice, corporeal augmentation, thaumaturgy, and dimensional manipulation. Which, I mean, like, you start very simple and then you work up to some crazy stuff there.
Yeah.
Sarkicism as a whole is very secretive, and the general public does not know about them, as with everything that deals with the SCP Foundation. With the exception of the Church of the Broken God, who views them as their apocalyptic, like, other half. Sarkikites, there we go, that's the word I wanted earlier. Sarkikites performed organic manipulation in order to become anomalous and transcend the physical limitations of man. So, for example, last time when we talked about Harold Holt, and I forget what exact number of Harold Holt it was, but they said that they had, like, chopped off his forearm and he had tentacles coming out of it and stuff like that. It's to transcend that limitation of the human form.
Yeah, and that's kind of like, in broad strokes, is like the overarching goal of Sarkicism, according to them, is that human transcendence beyond what we are now into a more fleshy, perfect being.
Yeah. Disease is revered, and Sarkic shrines have offerings of tumor growths as well as swollen lymph nodes. Cult members see contagion as consecration, as a way to cull the meek and spread their beliefs. And as alluded to earlier, Sarkicism can be kind of branched off into two different forms. So you have Proto-Sarkicism, which is typically found in remote regions of Eurasia. They're typically poor and hostile to outsiders, and they're incredibly technophobic and bound by superstition and taboo. Whereas Neo-Sarkicism, it embraces modern culture and society, and their followers are usually affluent families rich with history and scandal. These are going to be your politicians and whatnot that, they go home and then they take off their face and they got, like, a little vacuum mouth that, like, sucks up all their dinner.
You don't have one?
I'm not going to grace that question with an answer.
Uh-huh.
It seems as though the Foundation only knows a fraction of what Sarkicism is and what it intends to accomplish. So far, Sarkicism seems intent on an SK class dominance shift with possibility of an XK end of the world scenario. And that's kind of what I've gathered from all the other nerds over here and the people with regular mouths. So, Zach, take it away.
Yeah.
Tell me about Sarkic.
Yeah. So diving into sort of the origins of Sarkicism, and for the audience, we're gonna say that like 9 different ways. So just bear with us. It's a dead language, so there's not like we can go ask anyone that immediately won't try to eat us. So yeah, Sarkis
with their telescope mouths.
Telescope mouths that Caleb may or may not have. Was founded by Grand Carsus Ion, who was born a slave into the Devi Empire, which we think was around the time, or around the area, somewhere in the vicinity of the Caucasus. Though, due to several temporal anomalies and other post-collapse time anomalies, nailing down exactly when or if it ever fell is a very loaded question that's going to get you several different answers and may affect baseline reality if you think about it too long. So needless to say, going past that, Grand Carsus Ion was born at somewhere in Adatum, which is, again, somewhere in the vicinity of the Caucasus. We think around 1800 BCE. To what we think was some sort of priestess and a concubine father. At some point after growing up in Adatum, ended up escaping into the wilds past Adatum, and at this point I think is when he makes contact with the primary deity, and also I would almost say like primary internal antagonist of Sarkicism, the god Yaldabaoth, which is sort of seen as this primary creator and manifestation of the material plane, which taught the associated powers to Grand Carsus Ion, which he then used to lead a massive slave revolt against the Devi Empire, and then start the what we would then, I suppose, think about as the Sarkic Empire, which is where that guy was writing to and referring to when he said that they would meet back up in Adatum. They were talking about Ion's Adatum after the slave revolt. More succinctly, given the dates range we know of from the Siege of Gyaros, which it implies that at this point, or at the time of the Siege of Gyaros, Grand Carsus Ion would have been about 600 years old. And so, like Dr. Caleb mentioned, in broad strokes, the primary goal of Sarkicism is this idea of human transcendence through this disease and through flesh manipulation and just changing the physical form of us, which is in line with the primary material aspect of Yaldabaoth. It's worth pointing out that there are more than 2 factions within Sarkicism. Yes, there are the 2 broad camps of Proto and Neo Sarkics, but there are also several other sort of smaller cults. Like there's one that's primarily associated with spreading the Red Death, but again is possibly 610. I had a whole list of notes here, and I can't find them. But anyway, just know that there are several other smaller groups that have their own additional sub-goals under the guise of spreading the idea of fleshy transcendence. It's also later on in the history. The reason why I say that Yaldabaoth is considered an antagonistic feature inside of its own religion is that Grand Carsus Ion and Yaldabaoth actually came to blows, and Yaldabaoth was killed by Grand Carsus Ion, which is actually how we got an SCP. Caleb, are you familiar with the Red Pool in Siberia?
Yeah,
that's the blood of a god.
Gross.
Yeah, so you can thank that asshole for giving us that thing.
That's kind of interesting. That just like, I might have zoned out or something, but Grand Carsus Ion was born as just a dude, right?
As far as we can tell, if you cut through all like the Hayek writings and sort of the messianic nature of him, you get the feeling that before having that weird communion with Yaldabaoth, that Grand Cursus Ion was a dude.
And he straight up just punched a outer entity to death.
So here's the thing, though, is that, like, so he's born a slave, escapes, gets to talking to Yaldabaoth and Yaldabaoth's, like, archons, which are sort of like, you can think of them almost like angels in the, say, in the Judeo-Christian sense. At this point, when he has that communion, Grand Cursus Ion is given the powers we mostly associate him with the idea of flesh crafting, reality manipulation, and stuff like that. When he gets those powers, he goes back, starts the slave revolt against the Davites, and then basically takes over the Davite Empire from within under this new slave regime. At some point, the occult wars between Sarkicism and the Church of the Broken God, or the Proto-Church of the Broken God, followers of McCain, happen, which is when the Siege of Gyaros kind of ties in. I don't recall a specific date being attached to the Rumble in the Jungle with Yaldabaoth, but it did. So far, that seems to be a plausible explanation for why we have that particular entity. Is that Yaldabaoth fought his basically his spiritual son, and then did not walk away from it.
God, what a fucking WrestleMania! What a goddamn WrestleMania pay-per-view!
Yeah.
Death match in the cage.
But yeah, in the way that he's referred to in writings, and even you can kind of see indications of that in the letter, the unsent letter from Gyaros, is that Grand Cursus Ion is basically like a meat-themed Jesus for the Sarkics. Though there are a couple really interesting things to think about when talking about Ion, is that he's always painted in a benevolent light, but if you look at the things that they're actually doing, like, they don't seem particularly benevolent to me. Like this idea of veneration of disease and I'm dubious of their claims of transcendence, but I guess mostly because I don't get what they mean by transcendence, because all I ever see them do, at least according to the research, is just spread horrible violence and mayhem.
But isn't that humanity in general?
Parts of it, yeah. But it seems like they definitely go with that and are real single-issue voters on that point.
Fair. But consider this. You can have hentai tentacles instead of fingers.
Well, I mean, we can do that now. So I guess I don't see it as a bonus.
Wait, you can do that?
We'll talk about it off camera. But yeah, and so Grand Cursus Ion at some point sort of disappears from the record, and so you always have this like second coming the second coming narrative of Grand Cursus Ion, that he's out there somewhere nebulously. So yeah, and so that's sort of a Sarkicism 101 in deeper notes, building off of what Dr. Caleb said. And so one of the goals for this season and this block of research is that we're going to be using some of these entities and entries in the SCP archives to talk about Sarkicism in more focused lenses, and talk about particular aspects of Sarkicism, because I feel like there's a lot to talk about in terms of, like, not only what it is and what it does, but also why are people attracted to it and the kinds of people who are attracted to it. Because with taking the distinction between Neo and Proto-Sarkics, I feel like with Neo-Sarkics, it has this appeal of, because it's tied to the Yaldabaothic ideas of materialness and hedonism, that it appeals sort of to their general sense of the here and now and sort of short-sighted pleasure-seeking, which makes sense in terms of, like, these powerful intellectual figures who are using as a guise to indulge some of their worst natures. Whereas with Proto-Sarkics, it has this almost like primeval reverence for things that are outside their control. Sort of like how when people used to pray to primordial deities to avoid like plagues or famines. But instead of praying to keep it away, they almost pray to give it this anthropomorphization of power. Because with proto-Sarkics, you have this more distinction of like they understand that Yaldabaoth was an antagonistic force in their religion as opposed to a benevolent force, because I feel like they kept with the traditions of, Grand Cursus Ion killed Yaldabaoth because Yaldabaoth wanted to destroy the world in sort of an unmaking, whereas Ion, his overarching goal seemed to be this, again, fleshy transcendence.
Oh, I realize we're not in person and in video call. I've had my hand raised for like at least the last.
Oh, sorry.
Are the Davites all named Daves?
No, as far as we can tell, they had some real funky fantasy ass names, and we can talk more about the Davites. For the purposes of sarcasm, just know that they were a crazy cult empire that happened to give birth to the Sarkics. But they are their own very dense lore. They have their own very dense lore that will require its own season at some point. Similar with the Church of the Broken God, just because there's more that can be talked about in a single conversation.
But none of them were named Dave. I need a refund.
I cannot tell you if none of them were named Dave. I can tell you that none of them we found were named Dave.
That's just bad naming conventions.
Yeah.
Ancient people, fix your names.
Right? Fucking nerds.
Okay, well, that seems like a pretty good overview, and like Zach alluded to earlier, this entire season is going to be about these fleshy creatures and fleshy meta magic.
Get out.
And we're gonna continue to tie it back to the beliefs of Sarkicism and kind of answer some questions towards the end of it, hopefully, of like what is Sarkic SCPs and what Sarkicism is, and we're gonna do the job that the SCP Foundation never could, and we're gonna get an interview with Grand Cursus Stein.
No, we are not. Not only do I not want to find him based off what I know, I think if we did find him, it would cause several realities to implode on themselves. Including the one that we fucking live in.
That's why you're not the one that's going to be the on-the-field reporter.
Goddamn right.
Yeah, so look forward to lots of talk about sphincters and entrails and disease and all that. It's going to be a wonderful season, very uplifting, yeah, we're gonna solve the mystery of Sarkicism this season, or we will maybe not die trying, but maybe get bruised.
We're gonna give you a good basic understanding of Sarkicism just before the amnestics kick in.
Yes. So, yeah.
Well,
do you have anything else to mention before we send the poor listeners on their way?
No, nothing that we won't be able to get into with the other things. Just know that for everything we say and mention here on the show, there's probably going to be 2 other things that we could have mentioned and didn't, just because of time.
100%. And, also, there's only a certain amount of times I'm allowed to say sphincter without getting, torn off the internet. So, in the meantime,
so
in the meantime, Zach, where can people find you?
They can find me over on my writing blog of makeawritingcheck.blogspot.com or on YouTube under Roll for Writing Presents. Both of them are places where I sort of showcase my horror and sci-fi fiction. Yeah, check it out.
Cool. And you can find me at Calica1738 on Twitter and Instagram. The only reason that you should ever follow that is if you want 2 reminders of when this podcast goes live. And you can follow the podcast on, as I don't have any of this prepared, you can follow the the podcast on Twitter at SCPod_cast. You can follow us on Instagram at SCPod.cast. We're available on Spotify and YouTube. I've said this before, but other podcasting platforms are just not lucrative enough, and they don't deserve us.
Also, they wouldn't listen.
Exactly. It's a very exclusive club, apparently. It's just mid.
It's just Joe Rogan trying to sell you
please-
horse pills.
Yes. As all content creators say, it really does help out for the algorithm and letting us get out to other people that might like this kind of content. Please remember to like, follow, rate, subscribe, tell your grandma about us, tell your dog about us, tell Grant Carsus Scion.
Have you talked to
Grant
your
Carsus Ion
grandmother about
us.
meat, Jesus?
Exactly. If you do that, then the meat version of Jehovah's Witnesses do not come to your door. It's me. I'm the meat version of Jehovah's
Or they
Witnesses.
do. We can't tell.
Yeah. So, in the meantime, please remember to do all those chill things. And, Zach, what kind of meta magic do you have for us today?
Remember, laugh is fun.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time.
Bye.